Hello viewers, I'm here with the hour's news from Tigray TV. I'm Mayor Nimana. We'll be reading the news for you today. Stay tuned. Let's now proceed to the details. The president of the UN Human Rights Council announced on Wednesday the appointment of Fatou Bensouda, Kari Betty Murungi, and Stephen Ranter to serve as members of Independent International Commission to investigate human rights violations in Ethiopia. The Council had approved the formation of the Commission in mid-December following widespread condemnation of joint investigation conducted by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, a state-appointed body, and the UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights. Aregawi Gabrumkail has more.
President of the United Nations Human Rights Council, Ambassador Federico Villegas, announced yesterday the appointment of 3 commissioners that will be leading an impartial investigation into allegations of gross violations of human rights and abuses of humanitarian and refugee law in Ethiopia committed since November 3, 2020. Fatou Bensouda, a former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court from Gambia, will be chairing the commission. The president also appointed Kari Betty Murungi, a lawyer and advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and Stephen Ranter, a college professor at Michigan University, with a focus on humanitarian law and accountability for human rights violations. On December 17, 2021, the United Nations Human Rights Council held its 33rd special session on the gross violation of human rights in Ethiopia. The Council discussed and passed Resolution A-HRC S33 L1, which called for the formation of a new international investigative team composed of 3 human rights experts, all appointed by the President of the UNHRC, to report on the rights abuses and violations in Ethiopia starting from November 3, 2020. The Council adopted a resolution with 21 states in favor and 111 in abstention. 50 states voted against the resolution, including Eritrea, who is a party to the conflict and whose forces have committed numerous atrocities, including the Aksum massacre that saw the killing of hundreds of Tigrayans during the Aksum Tzion festival. In a clear rejection of the finding of the joint investigation by Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the Higher Commissioner for Human Rights, the resolution states that a new investigation covering the entirety of the conflict was essential to ensure that such investigations complies with international standards, including with respect to transparency, while also addressing issues of common responsibility in order to address impunity in a meaningful way. The government of Tigray issued a statement on December 80, 2021, welcoming the decision by the UN Human Rights Council to conduct an impartial investigation and announced that it will be established a body tasked with the responsibility of cooperating with the Commission, as the Ethiopian government has continued to deny access to international humanitarian rights groups and media.
Till this day, the Battle of Adwa has continued to serve as a symbol of African independence and resilience for Pan-Africanists everywhere. But the condition of Adwa, the district in central Tigray where the battle took place in 1887, symbolizes quite the opposite. For 16 months now, Adwa has been ravaged by its foreign forces from Eritrea, while its own government has denied its residents medication, food aid, and access to basic services such as communication, banking services, and electric power. Our reporter Sablor Klama asks what Pan-Africanism should mean in the context of 21st century and importance of accountability when African governments commit gross violations of human rights. Sablor Klama has the details.
The Battle of Adwa was a culmination of several battles between the Ethiopian and the Italian armies for nearly a decade. Emperor Yohannes and his general Ras Alula Abanega would defeat the Italians in Sahati and Dogali in 1887. The final victory that would come to secure Ethiopian independence for decades to come would take place in Adwa, central Tigray, in 1896. The Battle of Adwa is considered monumental as the first victory of an African nation against a European counterpart in centuries. In an introduction to the book, The Battle of Adwa, Reflections on Ethiopia's History Against European Colonialism, editors Paulus Milikas and Getachew Mataferia would write that Adwa holds a significant place in African history. It challenges the demanding Western conceptions of African cultures. It demonstrates that being targeted for colonization is not a prelude to fatality and that colonialism can be defeated. On March 2, 1896, would come a sign of independence and gave courage to other Africans to fight against European colonialism. In the mid-19th century, the concept of Pan-Africanism would start to emerge. The social movement would bring together Black people and people of African origin unite to work on a common interest of Black empowerment and resistance against European colonialism. By the late 1940s, with independence of many African countries, Africans took the lead in the Pan-Africanist movement. Most important African figures of that movement would become Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, as well as Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, as well as many more. Significant progress over the past few decades would redefine Pan-Africanism, no longer fighting against slavery and colonialism. Pan-Africanism now mostly stands for integration and connection of infrastructure and socio-economic activity of African nations. Intellectuals across the continent emphasize that Pan-Africanism today must be to reinforce the links between the nations by establishing and strengthening the common institutions, harnessing the human capital by integrating the continent, and providing avenues for intra-African trade, so that this would lead to the improvement of individual lives through the improvement of access to education, healthcare centers, and food security. As the Organization for African Unity would be succeeded by the African Union in 2002 to further promote social, political, and economic integration of Africa. But the noble cause of Pan-Africanism has often been abused by African leaders across the continent, hoping to escape accountability for human rights violations. The Ethiopian government and Eritrean regime have been screaming the mantra of Pan-Africanism for the past year. The Ethiopian government has gone so far to claim that the silence of some African countries in the face of gross violation of human rights, the use of famine as a weapon of war, and the involvement of non-African states in the arming and financing of the Ethiopian government is a symbol of their African solidarity.
The resolution of our internal matters was made exceedingly difficult by the role played by external actors. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you all for your support, solidarity, and understanding as we underwent these trying times.
Nahusanai Belai, a lecturer of political science at Magala University, says reducing Pan-Africanism to a relationship between three dictators and their ambitions to escape accountability would be a desecration of the noble cause of Pan-Africanism today.
The alliance between Abiy, Isaias, and Formaggio that we were witnessing cannot be considered as an alternative for IGAD or the previously existing functional regional blocs or organizations of conflict resolution or development cooperative frameworks. So far, what we have seen from this alliance of three dictators of the Horn, and the outcome is war. I see no major development project. I don't see any railway project between Ethiopia, Djibouti, or Ethiopia and Eritrea, or Ethiopia and Somali, or I see no major development corridor or a developmental aspiration from the alliance of this emerging friendship of dictators. What we can say is it's an alliance or a friendship based on vengeance or for vendetta reasons.
But allowing Abiy Ahmed to lead a Pan-African movement would be wrong for multiple reasons. For more than his corrupt intentions, Abiy Ahmed has at least one occasion let it slip that he did not believe he was black.
የጎንደርና የባህር ዳር ኤርፖርት አሁንም እኮ ለጥገና ቢሊየንስ እየጠየቀን ነው ያለው። ጁንታ ያፈረሰው በሮኬት በእኛው ሮኬት ማንም ሰው ደንታው አይደለም። ባህር ዳር ላይ ሰው ሞቷል። ጎንደር ሮኬት ሲተኮስ እንደ ቤተሰብ ደባርቅ ላይ ያለቁ ሰዎች እንደ ቤተሰብ አንድ ፋሚሊ ያለቃል። አርሶ አደሮች ማንም ሰው ያነሳም። አረ የትግራዩ ይቅር ቤኒሻንጉል ላይ መተከል ዞን ስላለው ጭፍጨፋና መፈናቀል ማንም ሰው ያነሳም። ለምን? እነሱ ጥቁሮች ናቸው፣ አርሶ አደሮች ናቸው፣ ምንም ገንዘብ የላቸው፣ ፌስቡክ የላቸው፣ ሎቢ አይቀጥሩ። ምን ያስፈልጋል ስለነሱ መናገር? አንድ ሰው አይናገርም።
Nahusanna emphasizes that the idea of Habesha exceptionalism and at the same time attempts to exploit the Pan-Africanism movement to escape accountability for your role is disempowering, and African people stand starkly in contrast with one another.
I don't think, for instance, in so many instances, I don't think Abiy believed that he is black. He doesn't consider himself as a black person. We have seen in many instances mentioning and relegating issues, what we might call the quote-unquote Ethiopian or the Habesha exceptionalism. We have seen that. But he tries to exploit and manipulate the Pan-African notion of blackness and the black resistance, while at the same time crushing the demands of his own people in Ethiopia.
But if we look beyond how Abiy Ahmed chooses to identify himself, we also find that the leader of one of the largest nations in the African continent has also taken part in perpetrating anti-black rhetoric.
በቆየው የአሜሪካ የአገዛዝ ስርዓት ውስጥ በጣም የተጎዳ የሚባል ማህበረሰብ ጥቁርና ጁ ነው። ሁለቱም ተገርፈዋል፣ ተጨቁነዋል፣ ታስረዋል፣ እንዳይሰሩ ሀብት እንዳያደረጁ ሆነዋል። ልዩነቱ ጁ ከሲቪል ራይት በኋላ ትንሽ መብት መታየት ሲጀምር ዘፈኑ፣ ግጥሙ፣ ፊልሙ፣ ድራማ ወደፊት ሆነ። እንዴት ዓለምን ኮንከር ማድረግ እንደሚችል ኢኮኖሚክ ፓወር መፍጠር እንደሚችል ያስባል። ጥቁር ደግሞ እዚህ ላይ ቆሞ ትናንትና ኮገረፉ፣ ገደሉ፣ እንዲያደረጉ ይላል። አሁን ያለው ትውልድ ትናንትና ውስጥ እንዲኖር አደረገው። እነዚህ ደግሞ አሁን ነው ነገ ውስጥ እንዲያስብ አደረጉት። 50 ዓመት አልሞላም ጁ ሀብታም ሆነ፣ ጁ ፓወርፉል ሆነ፣ ጥቁር ነፃ ደሃ ሆነ። ነፃነቱን አግኝቷል፣ መዝፈን ይችላል፣ ግን ደህንነቱን መቀየር አልቻለም።
While the victory of Adwa is sure to continue to be an important milestone in African history, Adwa should always be marked with deep reflection on how we can take the Pan-African movement forward.
The use of rape as a weapon of war has been one of the many gruesome features of the ongoing conflict. More so, the systematic attack on health facilities has exacerbated the burden on survivors that have found it difficult to cope with subsequent health complications without the necessary care. We spoke to one survivor who had been gang raped by Eritrean forces as she and her children, of 3 children, were attempting to escape indiscriminate shelling from western Tigray. Salomi Taghlai has more.
The use of rape as a weapon of war has been one of the many gruesome features of the ongoing conflict. International human rights groups and media organizations have made reference to the gruesome nature of the attack on women in Tigray as indicator of the genocidal intent of invading forces. We spoke with one survivor who says she was attacked by Eritrean forces while attempting to escape the ethnic cleansing campaign in western Tigray.
After 3 of them raped me, I couldn't control myself. I don't know what happened next. We were in the middle of nowhere. No one could help us. The area was occupied by enemy forces. I don't remember anything till the next day. I have 3 children aged 4, 6, and 14. I traveled for days with my children trying to escape shelling. We would spend the night in farmers' houses and ask them for food.
The survivor says the assault was made even more difficult to bear due to the systematic destruction of health facilities in Tigray that has seen over 80% of health facilities in Tigray almost completely destroyed.
When I went to see health professionals, they said I needed 3 units of blood. They said there were no medical equipment in Shura, but suggested we go to Aksum. When my brother reached Aksum, he realized the equipments were also looted.
Nurse Mulmesfin works at the only one-stop center for survivors of sexual violence in Tigray. She says that even if survivors were to make it to health facilities, they were unlikely to access care.
There is no medication, no medical equipment, no doctors. Many have been displaced.
The survivor says she is also suffering from cervical cancer, but is not able to receive medical care due to the ongoing blockade.
I'm suffering from a cervical cancer. The only place I can get medication is in Addis Ababa, but I can't get there because of the siege. I'm awaiting my death. I'm worried about my children.
She is suffering day and night. Only painkiller like morphine could help alleviate the pain caused by the cancer, and there is no way to get that medication.
Mulu says the international community has to play its part to ensure that medical supplies are able to reach Tigray.
Why should civilians suffer due to lack of food and medication? Why should people die because they can't access medication? Why should our sister die in front of our eyes? Why should we live cry? The international community, especially developed countries, should focus on supplying food and medication to human beings instead of weapons.
The World Health Organization has said there are 3.9 million people in need of medical assistance in Tigray, many mothers and children suffering from easily treatable illness.
An ethnic cleansing campaign led by Amhara forces in western Tigray has displaced over 1 million Tigrayans. Our reporters spoke with the IDPs sheltered in northwestern Tigray that share gruesome stories of violence by Amhara forces. Amani Lamara has more.
The Amhara forces, especially the group known as the Fano Vigilante, have committed so many atrocities in western Tigray. So many civilians were forced to flee from their localities to save their lives. So many of them have lost their family members and beloved ones due to the atrocities committed by these forces. Women IDPs say that they were forced to be displaced, leaving their home and business behind.
We left our sesame crop, shop, and a hotel behind. They killed the cows and goats we owned with cruelty. We also heard that they killed boys, whom later on we found and buried all in one grave. We buried the 3 of them together. 2 of them were our neighbors, and one was from a place called Idris.
The invaders came in May 2021 and looted all our crops. They looted 15 quintals of our crop. They badly beat my father-in-law and looted all his crops, goats, and cattle. In July 2021 again, they came back and asked us to show them where the members of Tigray Special Forces are resided. And they beat us savagely, saying that we possess firearms. It was then that we were forced to leave our locality on 21st of July.
The women say 7 men whom their brothers and husbands flee with up to Takaza River were kidnapped by Eritrean soldiers. No one knows their whereabouts now.
As we approached the Takaza River, it was full and we couldn't cross the flood. We were captured by the time we were attempting to cross through the bridge. We were 47 in number, with 17 of them being men. We were then imprisoned in the hotel of Takaza for 3 days. They took everything we had and beaten us. They separated the men and took them someplace else, away from us. We have no idea what became of them after that.
The Eritrean army was shelling our home, and the battle was right where we live. So we came crossing so many dead bodies.
The women IDPs say that even now they are suffering due to shortage of food and are worried about the ceaseless drone attacks.
We fled with nothing to survive on. The conflict followed us everywhere we went. We went from one place to another, and it has now been 1 year since we came. We still have nothing to survive on. We can't be able to get a house or a bed to sleep on.
The women called on the international community and humanitarian organizations so that they can help them understanding the situation they are living in.
We have 5 to 6 children and they have nothing to eat. There is no water, no aid, and nobody to help us.
We have no food. Our children are malnourished. We couldn't get enough food for the whole year. We are in a dire situation due to the siege. We pled on the international community to help us as soon as possible.
The siege imposed on Tigray for months has had a multitude of consequences. One of such consequences has been the depletion of medical supplies and food items, further exasperating the medical emergency on the ground. Health professionals at Magala Hospital say that they're now being forced to reuse materials as well as collect non-medical items from the community as a substitute to much-needed medical supplies. Kubram Al-Dabrahan has more.
Sister Hadas Gabraslase is a coordinator of the delivery ward at Magala Hospital. She says that the medical service is being given using hand-washed gloves and shawls collected by the health professionals from the community following the depletion of medical supplies induced by the siege.
We used to utilize brand new gauzes before the siege was imposed. Now, no gauze is available, and thus we're using these shawls instead. As you can see, we're preparing gauze by cutting up used shawl in two parts. We let the blood dry up from the hand gloves, and then we wash it thoroughly outside. There is no powder to use applying on the gloves. It is difficult to utilize gloves without powder. Without a powder, we are even forced to help the mother deliver her child with our bare hands. We know we will not be able to get any medication if we got infected by any means as a result of not taking care of ourselves.
The health professionals say that they are forced to use their bare hands because it is difficult to make use of the used gloves, and many patients are at a grave risk due to the lack of medical supplies in the hospital.
We're helping the mothers deliver with our bare hands because there are no hand gloves at all. I'm afraid we might transmit them some diseases like hepatitis and HIV/AIDS. We're putting them in danger. We're forced to cut up these shawls due to the depletion of medical supplies.
It is tragic not to be able to save our patients due to shortage of medical supplies, though we have the qualification to give them the care they needed.
People who are seeking medical treatments at the hospital say that they are in jeopardy due to the lack of medication at the hospital, even though the health professionals are doing everything they could to help them recover.
I'm here to get a medical care for my daughter. Her hand has been burned. It is useless to stay here because there aren't any medications. I delivered, but I'm still bleeding. I haven't received any medication till now.
I came here with my daughter to get a medical service for her broken leg. We only got the bed and blanket. No medication is available.
It is highly stressful and horrifying as there are no any medications here.
The healthcare receivers and health professionals at the hospital urged the international community to help stop the all-encompassing siege, which has been severely affecting their lives in many ways.
What's going on? Why is no one giving a care about this? Why isn't there any humanitarian aid? Isn't there any humanity?
No infant is getting vaccinated, and also a woman who delivers is not being given anti-D. So the international community has to do something to resolve this problem.
It is to be recalled that thousands of people are dying and many are in danger due to the depletion of medical supplies in Tigray.
Office for Early Warning and Emergency Response has reported that over 200,000 civil servants have not received pay in the past 9 months due to the blockade on banking services in the region. The office says this has further exacerbated the humanitarian situation that has seen over 6.5 million people in crises. Auraga Rutinsei reports.
Abiy Ahmed's government and allies have worked persistently to deny basic access to the people of Tigray over the past 9 months. They have excluded Tigray from federal budget. They have shut down banks, telecom and electric power supply in the region. They have also hampered humanitarian aid into Tigray by denying access to transportation, fuel and cash. They have done every evil as they reach, including drone attacks, with the aim of exterminating the people of Tigray. Gebrexiabir Aragawi, Director of Early Warning and Emergency Response Directorate Office at Tigray Bureau of Agriculture and Rural Development, says more than 220,000 civil servants have been exposed to severe economic crisis as they have become out of payroll for the past 9 months and counting.
መንግስት ሰራሕተኛ ልዕሊ 220,000 ዝኸውን ምንም ዝበሃል ልዕሊ 9 10 ወርሒ ደሞዝ ዘይተኸፈለን.
More than 220 civil servants have not been paid their salary for the past 9 months. Retired government workers who have deserved respect and recognition for the services they provided to their country have been denied their retirement fund. All these are now in dire economic condition.
Gebrexiabir also said 6.3 million people in Tigray have been deprived of access to an estimated 1.6 billion birr aid. Gebrexiabir also said 6.3 million people in Tigray have been deprived of access to an estimated 1.6 billion birr aid that was planned to be delivered on 6 rounds over the past year. This, according to Gebrexiabir, has worsened the already dire economic situation in the region.
More than 4.7 million quintal aid that was planned to enter Tigray was not delivered to the region due to the blockade by the Abiy Ahmed's regime. This aid was worth more than 1.6 billion birr, and it includes only the food aid that has been allowed to enter Tigray under the HRD 2021. That aid amount excludes other humanitarian aids that have blocked from entering Tigray.
In addition, Gebreziabher indicated that the Addis Ababa regime insisted, claiming that the people of Tigray is 5 million, opposing the UN's approval last year to provide support to 6.3 million people in Tigray. Gebreziabher also added that his bureau is working hard to keep the UN agencies informed about the number of people who are in urgent need of food aid in Tigray, underscoring that the 5 million claim is based on a population census that was carried out 14 years ago.
ምጥፋእ ዘርኢ ዝፍቀዱልና ሕዚ እውን ንኸዳኸሙና እቲ ሰብኣዊ ሓገዝን ዝተሓተተ ንኸይጸድቕ
The enemies who declared genocide on the people of Tigray have been determined to make aid inaccessible into the region to further aggravate the already dire situation. They insisted opposing emergency food aid to 6.3 million people demanded by the government of Tigray. They claim Tigray doesn't deserve this much aid, calling it over demand, as they say the people of Tigray is 5.6 million, a number that was true as of a population census some 14 years ago. But we have been determined to clarify things to aid agencies and the UN.
International human rights groups and media organizations have made a reference to gruesome nature of the attack on women in Tigray as indicators of genocidal intent of invading forces. Our reporters spoke with one survivor of sexual violence in western Tigray that says she was attacked by Fano vigilante group while attempting to escape the ethnic cleansing campaign in western Tigray. Kabrom Al-Dabrahan has the report.
This woman, who chose to remain anonymous, was forced to abandon her former residence at the district of Walqait, located at the western part of Tigray. She has now taken refuge in Shira and Daslasi, nearly 260 kilometers away from the capital, Maqala, because she was gang-raped by the Amhara vigilante group Fano last year. She has gone through multiple traumatic experiences as a result of the barbaric violation committed on her by the so-called Fano vigilante group.
I was gang raped by 3 members of Amhara vigilante group in my own house while my child was there crying. The situation got worse when the Eritrean forces came to our place, and that was when I decided to come here.
When the Ethiopian forces and their allies invaded Tigray, they raped so many women without even taking into account the presence of their children, husbands, and other family members.
They took away our children from us and put us inside a hut used as a storage for sorghum and imprisoned us there for days. I wasn't able to see my daughter, who is 1.5 years old, for 3 days long. They committed so many atrocities on us. I doubt whether they have anything human in them. I couldn't walk well because I was in an excruciating pain. I also had a terrible itchiness. However, after I got here at Suhul General Hospital, I was given an injection and some tablets. Now I am in a good hands and I have been treated well.
It is to be recalled that it has been reported by Maqala University that more than 127,000 women aging from 15 to 49 have been victims of gender-based violence. Almost 1 in every 10 women in Tigray is a survivor of gender-based violence.
That wraps up our news for the hour. I'm Mary from Maqala, Tigray. Thank you for tuning in.